much do you know about the chakras? You probably heard them talked about as the 7 main energy centers in your body. You may have heard of them in yoga class, through guided meditation, or in Reiki. Maybe you know a little bit about the chakras, but aren't really sure how to use them to guide you. I'm creating a deep dive into the chakras and color therapy for the next 8 weeks. Each week, my guest and I will discuss one chakra, how they've connected to the energy of that chakra through their journey, and how they feel guided or inspired by the energy. Sound interesting? I hope you'll enjoy the conversation. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Grounding Journey. We are talking sacral chakra, and I have my guest, Natalie, with me, and of course, Elska is wandering through the desk. So Natalie, I'm super excited. She is a Columbus, Ohio-based yoga and meditation teacher and owner of Hemsa Lounge Yoga. Hemsa Lounge combines all of Natalie's passions for yoga, meditation, and art. And you've got this amazing artwork behind you, so I love that. Natalie's been teaching yoga for 8 years and is a student of yoga and meditation for almost 25 years. She's passionate about teaching, sharing, and inspiring others through all the modalities that have made her an impact in her own life. So we are soul sisters already, just reading your bio, but we did have to stop the conversation and start the recording because we were having so much fun talking. But Natalie, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm just so excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. Well, and the way that we got connected is my guest, who is the solar plexus, found me online, reached out. She became my solar plexus interview. So that'll be the next interview. And she recommended you because you were actually going through a series of chakra classes in your own studio. So you've recently gone through that work again. You've taken people through it. So I think it's going to be an amazing conversation. And I'm so glad how the universe works to bring people together and the synchronicity that we're experiencing together.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I'm just, I feel like you just fell on my lap and it was just perfect timing. I've been doing a chakra flow class at a local studio called Matt Happy Yoga here in Columbus. And we're just breaking down the layers of the chakras each week. So it's just been an amazing experience and process to
love that.
Teach those.
Well, so I've read your formal bio and we've kind of talked a little bit about what you're doing, but let's start with, who are you? Who do your friends know Natalie as when you're sitting around the table drinking tea?
All right. So I think that they would probably say that I'm down to earth, a non-judgmental person, and creative, and maybe that I make them laugh. I think I'm generally a positive person. So perhaps they would say that I, try to lift up the energy when I'm around them. And my close friends might say that I'm resilient because I feel like they've seen me go through some difficult times in my life. So.
That it's definitely part of the resilience and the experiencing all the different things we go through. And I know that you and I have talked about your sacral and how that's reflected for you. So I'm looking forward to get into that conversation where we're talking about the elements. And that's going to be part of the conversation we're going to talk about is the elements associated with each of the chakras. And I think that's really neat. So let's just jump in. Let's talk about first for a second, your yoga training, because I'm working on my 300 hour. I completed a 200 hour. You teach yoga, and that experience has really helped you connect to your energetic body. And that's what is so interesting about yoga and the yoga teacher training experience, I think, is because it takes it deeper than just the physical. So share with me a little bit about that experience of becoming a yoga teacher and experiencing connecting to your energetic body.
Definitely. So I guess the pivotal time in my life where I decided that I would want to teach yoga was back in 2010 when I had an injury. It was a ruptured ovarian cyst that damaged my psoas muscle and surrounding muscles around it. So the psoas crosses through the hip, the pelvis, the low back, and it really is responsible for us being able to walk, to stand up straight. So for about a full year, I was in just excruciating pain from this ruptured cyst. And it took about 6 months, I would say, to figure out what exactly was going on. I had numerous imaging. I had laparoscopy surgery to see what's going on in there. And no one could really figure it out until I went to a pelvic pain specialist. So this doctor realized that this was all muscle related. And so that was sort of a very eye-opening experience, because my prescription for all the pain, besides some TENS unit therapy, the electrotherapy, was physical therapy.
Okay.
And they gave me all these different exercises to do. And as I was, doing my daily stuff, I was realizing, like, wow, I'm doing yoga right now. These are yoga poses. I've been practicing yoga for, at that time, it was about 15 years. So I was very familiar with the poses. Of course, they were named, different names.
Right.
And so for me, it was just this realization that I could really bring more yoga into my life to help heal my body. And there was also this energetic body piece to that as well, because I was really suffering with my, just emotional and energetic body, in terms of feeling, just completely uninspired. And I was taking care of my toddler at the time. And, very just feeling guilt that I couldn't spend time with him, shame, insecurity, all the things pretty much that are sort of like the opposite of what the sacral chakra is. So
well, you just mentioned, I'm sorry, you just mentioning those couple things. I'm like, oh, it was time for you to dig into the chakras and do that work.
Yeah, totally. And so it is interesting how we are talking about the sacral, because I feel like there is something there with the sacral. And not to mention, I was wanting to get pregnant again to try for my second. And, I had to put all that on hold. And so just felt completely at a super low. And when I started bringing some love and awareness and taking care of myself in that nurturing way, and bringing that attention to those parts of the body, then I really noticed that I was starting to get that abundance of the sacral and the playfulness and the sensuality back, and all these little qualities that I had lost throughout that difficult year, were slowly coming back. And eventually I just felt better. I got off any kind of painkillers that I was on, and reignited my joy and zest for life again. So it was really a year of just learning for me, and realizing that I have to learn more about yoga and meditation, and how do I, then help others deal with, these types of situations.
Well, and I think a couple of things. Thank you for sharing your story with us, because it really helps us. And I think women in their 30s, 40s, 50s deal with a lot of issues in our reproductive area, not necessarily reproductive organs. And as I always say, I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one. So I don't want to like give medical advice, but just looking at, we deal with hormonal issues, we deal with fertility issues, we deal with that, bowel issues. I was trying to figure out a polite way to say that. And it all comes from that sacral chakra area, at least for me, at least for the people I speak to. So there's always the difference, but that's what comes up. And one of the things that I really believe, and I've been reading more and more about as I've been digging into my next level of training, is illness tells us it's time to do the work. Illness tells us it's time to start the work. Illness tells us to get off our rear end and stop pretending like there's not work to do. And if you're listening to my podcast, then you probably agree with me. So I don't need to try to tiptoe
Yes.
around that. So, having had a child at that point in your life, wanting more, the sacral is creativity, it's self-transformation, it's abundance. There's so much happening right there that there's a lot of stuff that gets stuck. And, to point out another thing that you said when you talked about getting off the medications and that you were doing all these movements and flows, one of the things that I personally love about yoga is it's therapy for the body, because when we have those blocks in our bodies, uh, doing that movement is what moves that energy, instead of having to necessarily dig into what caused it and what was the root and relive that. And it's not just yoga. You and I love yoga, so it's easy to talk yoga. There was a point in my life that I loved Tai Chi, did the same thing. And I was thinking, my husband and I, before COVID, were taking swing dance lessons. And we loved that just because it was
So
something
fun.
fun to do on a Tuesday night.
Yes.
And my husband was a really bad dancer, so we needed lessons. But there was a gentleman there. And so we used to do, you'd have two circles. The outer circle was the men, the inner circle was the women. So you'd kind of rotate around to work with each other. And there were definitely some stuff he struggled with. And one day the teacher said something to him about, you're really struggling with this. Do you want help or not? And he said, I was in a motorcycle accident and was told I was going to be paralyzed to never walk again 8 months ago.
Wow.
And I didn't accept that answer. So through physical therapy, his doctor said, take dance lessons, get some movement in your body, and that released the trauma of a motorcycle accident. So, while we're talking yoga, any type of movement is going to move that energy. It's going to shift it. Whether
Definitely.
that gentleman was conscious over the fact that he had trauma stored in his body, he had trauma from the accident. He had trauma from being told he was never going to walk again. That movement, whether we're conscious or not, moves the energy. And that's so important. And so hearing you say
Absolutely.
you were doing that, that's
Yeah,
one of those things that we love about movement, is it just moves it without you having to pay $120 an hour for a therapist to overanalyze
definitely.
stuff.
That's, I mean, one of my go-tos is just,
Mhm.
put on some music and move
Mhm.
around, even if you're walking around the house or, uh, going on a walk, just something. Definitely. I notice my energy shift in a big way when I
Mhm.
just move. So,
Yes. Well, and let's talk a little bit more about sacral, because I know this is something you and I've discussed, is the
mhm.
root, the sacral, the solar plexus. And as we were discussing pre-call, when we were like, okay, we've got to start recording this.
Yeah,
When you're exploring the chakras, it's easy to know root. It's easy to know heart, throat, third eye, crown, and know what's associated with those. For me, when I started my journey of learning, and I'm 20 plus years into exploring the chakras and doing that work, and I still get confused over sacral and solar plexus and what do they do and what do they mean and what other elements are there. And so, what I wanted to just kind of share for a moment before we really dig into it is the root is all about community and your ancestors and where you come from. As you move into the sacral, it's about releasing ego, it's about discovering ourself, and it's coming into our true self. And that true self is our emotions, our creativity, our transformation, which then allows us to go into the solar plexus, which is about letting our light shine. And so I know that you feel strongly about the connection with the root, sacral, and solar plexus. So let's talk about what that connection is for you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like whenever I tap into the creative part, that creative energy center of the sacral, I might get inspired. I might have, all these ideas and plans to, bring things out into the world. But if I don't work on my solar plexus, then all those things just swim around within me and they don't have a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really once I start to just bring some awareness to the solar plexus and think about my motivation and what drives me and how can I actually bring these things to life? That's when, I start doing the thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
and there is the feeling, right? So I'm feeling this, creating this, and then when we reach a solar plexus is doing. So it's really just making it come to life. As far as the root, I find that for me, I really need some grounding. I
Mm-hmm.
have struggled with anxiety for a good chunk of my life. And so the grounding piece is so important for me, in particular, because if I have too many ideas, I get overwhelmed and
Mm-hmm.
it's like a chaotic mess. So I need to be grounded, so I can withstand all the movement that's happening in my sacral. And yeah, it's just a beautiful sort of concept, just the whole system as I think of it, of how it starts with the rootedness and then it goes up and bubbling up the creativity and continuing up the energetic column. Yeah, sort of the process. They work hand in hand for me. So
Well, and I think, that's one of the things that doing chakra work is you start at the root. For me, I start at the root. Maybe there's people who start at the crown. I'm a very um, grounded person. I want to live more in my crown because I live so deep in my root. So it's natural for me to start root work. I have a very dear friend, my soul sister, who's very much in her crown. So she starts there. But it is really important to understand that they do all lead one to another as we're talking. And one of the other things is, it's what resonates for you. It was resonates at that moment, at that cycle for you, as we've started to kind of dig into. And this is only really the second episode we're talking about it. So we'll dig more into that in other episodes. But where I say that the root is community, sacral is ourself, solar plexus is letting our light shine. There's also that element of the root is safety, and you have to feel safe before you can move into sacral, because when you look at people who are very boisterous, sometimes it's insecurities and ego because they don't feel safe in their root. So if you feel safe in your root, you have confidence in your sacral and you're able to do the action in your solar plexus.
absolutely. That's
And that's
beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks. That's one of those things of looking at what resonates for you and what each chakra, because they have different elements to them, mean at that moment to you, mean in that experience. And so let's talk about the sacral meaning right now, because I know that elements mean a lot to you. And
Do. Yeah.
let's talk about that, because we've talked about the energy. And so for people who are not as familiar with elements, there is, with the chakras, there's a color, there's a moon, planet, there's organs, there's food, there's music sounds, but there's also elements. So obviously root is earth, so that grounded. Sacral is water, solar plexus is fire, heart is air, throat is ether, and then the third eye and crown are more transcendent. So let's talk, because that's one of the things with sacral that I find really neat is water. And I've noticed my attraction to water. And you have a really neat story about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a story about the fire element and how the water calmed down the fire element. So I can definitely share that. And I'd like to actually share the Anadia Judith little quote, if
Yes,
that's okay. So I have her
please.
book right here. Let me see, I marked it.
And
So
for people not looking at the
yeah,
book or the video, you have so many sticky notes and tabs. Like you
oh my
are
gosh,
so
I
my
do.
heart. It like I need a picture of that just because of how many you have, and that it's so all about my heart. You just
It's
put
a
a big
great book.
smile on my face.
So she writes, water is receptive, adopting the shapes of that which it encounters, following the path of least resistance, yet gaining power and momentum as it flows.
That's beautiful.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, to me, it's just a beautiful concept to imagine ourselves molding around these jagged edges of life, like
Mhm.
river water, just molding its way around the river stones and boulders, and just keeping in mind that we all have the water element within us. And so for me, it's really just remembering that if I can glide and move through these obstacles and just really flow in a fluid and graceful way around life's obstacles, then it's just the whole idea of eventually finding, the calm waters where you can just float, you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, just the element of change, also just the embracing change in a graceful way. And so tapping into the story about the fire element, and I know that we talked about that when we first met, but in the summer of 2019, we had a house fire and we lost everything, had to gut the entire house. And so after this process, the fire element was a big trigger for me. And I've always loved fire, bonfires and fireplaces. And after the house fire, my relationship with it just changed, which was really interesting. It was almost like it made me angry.
Mhm.
And it was shortly after that I went to a workshop with Lauren Roche. He is the author of the Radiant Sutras. And
Okay.
this one activity that he had us do, which was really cool and actually really a great thing to do to cultivate more of the qualities of the sacral. But he had us open up a bunch of blankets on the floor. We all got down on the floor and we started moving to the music, to it was just a very evocative sort of beat. And he invited us to move in any organic way that made sense in our bodies in that moment. And so it felt almost theatrical in a way, as
Mhm.
we're moving, and all these different emotions were coming up. And the emotions were almost guiding the movement. And I remember that during this time, and I want to say it was like a week or two later after the fire. It was maybe it was a few weeks after, but it was still really fresh in my in
Mhm.
my cells. And so I got the sense that I was like a phoenix rising. And
Mm,
I was coming out of the ashes, and it was this, really strong feeling of fire. It's as though I became the fire. The fire was within
mhm,
me. And I remember just breaking down in tears because it was just so overwhelming, but I didn't feel, what's the word? I guess the softness of it. It felt very harsh at that
mhm,
moment, probably because I was, almost head to head with the fire element. And so after that, speaking with Lauren about it, after we kind of each shared our story, he recommended the that I meditate with water and
mm,
adding in the coolness of water to turn down the heat of the fire. So that was really just a really interesting exploration of the elements for me, because
mhm.
then I started really working with the water, mostly in the shower, just feeling the water and,
Yeah.
allowing for it to release and rinse, and um, being in a body of water,
Mhm.
a bath. And yeah, there was definitely something so interesting about that, and how it softened that element of fire within me. So
Well, and I think it brings
yeah.
that harmony, because what can happen with our chakras is one can be really active and overpower another, which is what was happening to you at that time. And so finding that harmony, and I get so skeptical about using the word balance, because I think that puts so much pressure on us. Like that word makes us feel like it's got to be right. So finding that harmony, that yin and yang of ebb and flow. Like how many other cliche words can I pick right now to
Yeah, no,
use?
I use ebb and flow all the time. It's good.
Hmm. And that's, I love that you say the shower, because it's making the chakra work and clearing that energy accessible. And that's why I like bringing in the elements in this conversation, because it's not something we talked about in any of the other recordings. When I talk so much about grounding, I talk about, going outside, touching the dirt, gardening, stomping your feet on the ground, holding plants, things like that. So then bringing in that sacral work of water, whether it's in the shower and feeling water rinse over you, whether it's drinking a lot of water one day to really feel like it's flushing things out of your body, whether it's sticking your finger or your feet in a stream nearby the park. Or one of my things I really like to do is when I meditate, I envision my feet in the ocean. And so that water is flowing back and forth over my feet and bringing in that moonlight energy and taking away things that are time to let go of. And that's one of those elements I think is really strong with the sacral, is the letting go of ego, letting go of emotions, not letting stuff get dammed up inside of you. So the water element, I think for me, the sacral, the water element is the most powerful of the elements, because I can use that water visualization. And I haven't tried it in the shower. I haven't really thought about that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But and as a mom, we're all like, oh, my shower time is sacred because it's the only
Yes,
time we
for
get
sure.
away. My
So
kid's
sacred.
21. Yeah. And I still like he literally is 21, and I still go hide in the bathroom. Just the other night, Mom, can I come in? I'm like, dude, I'm using the bathroom. Like, so that bathroom time is sacred to us as
It
moms
is.
with kids.
Yeah, it's funny because I have, on occasion, I'll kind of go through, like chakra meditation, or any kind of meditation really, and standing in the shower. And
Mhm.
sometimes I'll get these like epiphanies or just ideas from that. And so I will use my finger and write write these things on the shower wall,
I love it.
and or on the glass actually. And I didn't realize it one time because I would, thought it was just going to disappear.
Mhm.
And so my husband, went like to take a shower after one of my chaotic notes that I was writing on the glass, and he was like, "What? Why did you write, blah 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 on the glass?"
I love that.
And so it's just funny because now if I do write anything, yeah, I make sure to either wipe it out or or leave it there so he can get inspired too. But
I
yeah.
love that. That is so wonderful. And it's how we get to share it with them and just make sure what you say for
Yes.
sure.
Exactly.
Well, I'm
It's
so
usually
glad.
positive.
Right? It's not like you idiot.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you brought that element conversation in with us because it's not something, because I don't think that the other elements resonate as strongly for me. Like grounding and the root does, but I don't think of them as connected. It's just this and this that I do. So I'm glad that you could bring that conversation in, because since we had our initial conversation, it's made me more aware of it, not in the sense of all the other elements, but in the sense of how much I've been drawn to water while I was doing sacral work. Because through the podcast, through the chakra card deck that I've been building, there's been a lot of creation, and we get stuck in that. And,
Yeah.
talking about creation for a moment, because you mentioned this earlier about creation can be childbirth. It can be creating a product. It can be any element of bringing something to life and to fruition. And so that's a neat
Definitely.
part.
Definitely. I mean, it even like cooking could be creating, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just so much there that we can create on a day to day. And I feel like that's one of my go-tos, is just creating in all forms, whether it's creative writing or uh, that, and putting on the music and
Mm-hmm.
just trying to move somehow. Those would be my two top um, sacral opening activities. Affirmations as well. Affirmations are always great.
So let's talk about affirmations for a second, because I haven't gotten to have this conversation with somebody in a while, and you and I haven't had it yet. So it'll be interesting to see. So, I used to love affirmations. I was the girl with two different color pads of sticky notes in my bathroom, because I have my own bathroom. The boys have their bathroom. So my husband and my son share a bathroom. Because I just don't want to clean up their bathroom. It's just
I
simple as
hear you.
that. And our master bathroom is small, so it was easy to push my husband into the hall bath that was bigger. So I had all these sticky notes all over my mirror. I would read through them every morning. I had them on my meditation space. And I read Danielle Laporte's stuff one time about when we're working on trust issues, which is also sacral work, sacral and root, they kind of go together in that one, that when we say affirmations, if we don't believe them, we're lying to ourselves, we're breaking our own trust, and we're counterproductive. So I've gotten really careful about the affirmations that I use. And now I kind of call them more mindful declarations that I'm stating to the universe instead of affirmations. So talk to
Definitely.
me, and I think that's something that's interesting. It took me a month of reading it, thinking about it, and kind of working through how I really felt about that. So I may be springing it on you last minute to have that conversation, but
No, totally. Yeah.
let's talk about how you do affirmations and how you view it and what it feels like.
And I feel like we'll talk a little bit more about that too when we get to our little
Yes.
book conversation, because Gabby Bernstein has morning mantras, which I was going to talk about too. But I do feel like I can totally relate to what you're saying with having the affirmations fit to what you are needing, and what makes sense. And sometimes I'll, kind of, if I read affirmations, I might change the words around so I can really customize it to what I am needing, or what, makes sense in my own life. And so Gabby Bernstein talks about morning affirmations, which makes so much sense to me because in the morning we wake up and we have sort of a clean slate, and it's just a great opportunity to manifest, this positivity. And the nighttime sort of releases all those negative thoughts from the day. So it makes sense for me. And it just helps to set the tone for the day when I do have, or when I do repeat morning affirmations. And yeah, I notice, again, just like putting on the music in the background, I notice just an immediate change, even like a 2% improvement in, my mood or my energy. Oftentimes I'll take my dog on a walk and put on some headphones and do my affirmations in that way. And I notice, I have a little bit more of a pep in my step when I'm walking, so it definitely shifts the energy for me in a big way. And as far as the chakras go, I feel like it's helpful to repeat the affirmations that sort of go with that particular chakra. And so for, the sacral, it might be, saying something like, I am flowing gracefully through life. I am bathing in the waves of nourishing energy, or, something that talks about the water element and that movement. I let creativity flow through me, things like that.
I like with sacral of I let go, I'm in flow, because I know for me, sometimes I'm holding on. I just what I expect, what I envision, what I want it to be. So definitely using those affirmations. And I'm excited. We'll talk a little bit more about mantras in the next episode, because those are something where I feel when you're using prayer beads and 108 times, you're stating it, you're letting the universe truly know that's what you believe, that's what you want. So it's finding those mindful affirmations that aren't just willy-nilly, but something that you believe, something that you connect to. So as you mentioned, you change the words to make it authentic for you.
For sure.
That's powerful stuff. That's how we make those shifts, by saying the things that connect and doing the movement to move that stagnant energy out of our bodies.
Yes.
That's so fun. Well, I have so enjoyed our conversation, and I'm so excited that we got to be connected. So Drina is amazing that she got to connect us, and she's going to be the conversation for
Thank you, Drina.
Yes, she is a wonderful. I have so enjoyed connecting with her on Instagram since then. So I know that my guests are going to want to hear more about you and connect with you, even if they're not in the Columbus area. Where are you hanging out that they, because I'm a part of your mailing list. So I got a couple of your chakra emails. So how can people find you to kind of connect?
So yeah, the newsletter off of hamsalounge.com, and Instagram is hamsa_lounge. And same thing for Facebook. And yeah, I would say that's the best way. I usually post anything local on my Instagram page and in my newsletters. Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you so much for this opportunity to hang out with you and chat with you today. It was really great, and I just love the conversation all around. I can't wait to continue following through all the chakras and just be in all those conversations.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie. And
thank you.
I know that we will stay in touch because we have so much connected. And I was actually looking at doing some different events in the area through different states. And I found one in Columbus that's in the fall. And I said to my husband, we have to do this one just so I can go see Natalie and Drina. So
I love that.
So hopefully I'll be up in the Columbus area in the fall. So I look forward to that. But thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for the connection and the conversation. And I'm excited because I have not read Super Attractor. And that's what we're going to talk about in our bonus episode. So if you are hearing this episode, Super Attractor releases on Thursday. So depending on what day of the week you hear this, or if you're hearing the replay later, definitely check out our conversation about Super Attractor by Gabby Bernstein. So thanks again, Natalie, so much for being here.
Thank you
It's been a
so
pleasure.
much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being a part of my journey. I would love to be part of yours. If you're interested in being a guest on Grounding Journey, I would love to hear from you. Please visit my website, groundingjourneypodcast.com, and you'll see the link to apply.